Anna sat at the edge of the bed, holding the tiny white test stick in her trembling hand. 2 clear lines. Her heart pounded with excitement, joy, and a little fear. She was finally pregnant, the miracle she and David had been waiting for. Smiling through tears, she imagined telling him the news. She thought he would scoop her up in his arms, cry with her, and whisper about the little family they would build together. But the look on David's face when she told him that evening was not the one she expected. He did not smile. He did not cry. He did not even touch her belly. He simply stared at her, his lips tightening as if she had announced something dreadful instead of something beautiful. "You're pregnant?" His voice was flat, almost irritated. "Yes," Anna whispered, her eyes shining. "Isn't it wonderful? We're going to be parents, David. I can already imagine holding our baby." David turned away, rubbing his forehead. "This isn't the right time, Anna. My career is just starting to take off. I don't want the responsibility right now." Anna froze. His words cut through her chest like a blade. Responsibility? She thought this was love, family, their shared dream. She reached for his hand, but he pulled away. That night, instead of celebrating, Anna sat alone at the kitchen table, staring at the untouched dinner she had prepared. She placed her hand over her belly, whispering promises to the little life growing inside her. "Don't worry, sweetheart. Mommy will protect you, even if Daddy doesn't want us right now." Days turned into weeks, and David grew colder. He came home late, his phone always in his hand, smiling at messages he never explained. When Anna tried to talk, he brushed her off. "You're too emotional," he said. "It's the pregnancy hormones. Stop overreacting." One evening, as she waited for him with dinner, the clock ticked past midnight. David didn't come home. The next morning, she saw a photo on social media. David, dressed sharply, smiling at a glamorous woman in a red dress. They were at a rooftop bar, champagne glasses in hand, looking like a couple in love. Anna's breath caught. Her vision blurred. She dropped her phone, her hands shaking. She couldn't breathe. The man she loved, the father of her unborn child, was with another woman while she sat at home alone, carrying his baby. She wanted to scream, but no sound came. Instead, she sank to the floor, clutching her belly, tears streaming down her face. In that moment, Anna's world collapsed. The dreams of a happy family shattered into pieces she could not gather. All she had left was the tiny heartbeat inside her. But Anna had no idea. This betrayal was only the beginning of a storm that would leave her broken, humiliated, and then transformed into a woman her husband would one day beg on his knees to take back. Before her world began to crumble, Anna Miller was known as the kind of woman who gave everything and asked for little in return. At 28 years old, she had built a modest but fulfilling life. She worked as an elementary school teacher in a quiet suburban town. Her students adored her because she was gentle, patient, and always carried a warm smile. Parents often said she was born to be a mother. Her days were simple. She woke early, brewed coffee in a chipped mug, and walked to school with lesson plans tucked neatly in her bag. She found joy in little things: children's laughter, sunlight streaming through classroom windows, and the idea of going home to a husband who she thought loved her as much as she loved him. Anna had not grown up with wealth or luxury. Her father passed away when she was 12, leaving her mother to raise her and her younger brother alone. From that experience, Anna learned resilience. She worked part-time jobs through college, determined to pay her way without being a burden. When she met David in her early 20s, she thought she had finally found safety and partnership. He was charming, ambitious, and full of promises about a bright future together. She believed in him. She believed in them. She gave up her small apartment and moved into his condo. She trusted that his long work hours and late-night meetings were sacrifices he was making for their future. She cooked for him, ironed his shirts, encouraged his dreams. She was the wife who stayed up waiting, no matter how late he came home. That was Anna, soft, nurturing, and endlessly loyal. But those qualities that made her a wonderful teacher, a devoted daughter, and a loving wife also made her vulnerable. She trusted too easily, forgave too quickly, and loved too deeply. When she discovered she was pregnant, she thought it was the answer to every prayer. She imagined David's career success blending with her steady devotion to create the perfect family. In her heart, she believed that their child would bind them closer than ever. But instead of joy, she was met with coldness. David's distance grew sharper with each passing day, and Anna's weakness showed. She clung to hope even when hope was fading. She convinced herself that if she tried harder, cooked better, or smiled more, he would return to her. She whispered to her unborn child every night that Daddy would come around, that families didn't just fall apart. She was wrong. Her students still ran to hug her every morning, but she had to hide her swollen eyes behind makeup. Her colleagues noticed her silence in the teacher's lounge, but she insisted she was just tired. The truth was, Anna was crumbling inside. The life she thought she had built with David was slipping through her fingers like sand. And deep down, a terrifying question gnawed at her. What if the man she had trusted with her heart and her future was already gone for good? It began with whispers, the kind that travel through office hallways and late-night phone calls. At first, Anna tried to ignore them. She told herself that people gossiped because they were jealous of David's rising career. But the whispers grew louder, and one evening the truth slammed into her like a freight train. David came home late again, his tie loosened, his cologne unusually heavy. Anna noticed lipstick smudged faintly on his shirt collar. Her voice trembled when she asked, "Who are you with, David?" He brushed her off with a laugh. "Clients. Don't be paranoid, Anna." But the next day, as Anna scrolled through social media during her lunch break, she froze. There it was. A photo of David, arm wrapped around a stunning woman in a scarlet dress. The caption read, "Power couple spotted at rooftop lounge last night." The woman's name was Vanessa Carter. At 30, she was everything Anna was not. Bold, glamorous, dripping with confidence. She worked in public relations and knew how to dazzle a crowd. Her raven black hair cascaded in waves, her lipstick was always red, and she never entered a room without every eye turning toward her. Anna's hands shook as she zoomed in on the picture. David's smile was wide, genuine, the kind of smile she hadn't seen directed at her in months. His hand rested on Vanessa's waist, possessive and intimate. The world spun, and Anna's stomach tightened, her unborn child kicking gently as if sensing her pain. That night, she confronted him again. "I saw the pictures, David. Don't lie to me. Who is she?" For a moment, David looked startled, but then his face hardened. "Vanessa understands me," he said coldly. "She believes in my future. She doesn't hold me back." Anna's mouth went dry. "Hold you back? I gave up everything to support you. I've stood by you through every struggle. And now I'm carrying your child." His eyes flicked toward her belly, then back to her face, completely unmoved. "I didn't ask for this, Anna. You chose it." Her heart shattered. He was choosing Vanessa, choosing champagne nights and flashing cameras over the quiet life they had built together. Anna realized then that she had been replaced. The days that followed were torture. David stopped coming home altogether. Anna heard from neighbors that he was often seen driving a new luxury car, Vanessa by his side. The tabloids called them the city's newest power couple. To the world, Anna no longer existed. She began to live like a shadow, dragging her heavy body through work, coming home to silence, crying herself to sleep. Yet even in her despair, she whispered to her unborn child, "You're all I have now. Mommy won't give up on you." But as she pressed her hand against her belly, she couldn't shake the haunting image of Vanessa's smirk, the way she looked victorious in every photo with David. And Anna had no idea that Vanessa's victory would not last, that the glamorous mistress was weaving a trap that would soon devour David whole. The first sharp pain came late one night as Anna sat alone on the couch, cradling her swollen belly. It wasn't just the usual ache of pregnancy. This was different. A sudden cramp shot through her body, making her double over in fear. Sweat broke out on her forehead. Her hands fumbled for her phone. She dialed David's number again and again, each ring echoing like a cruel reminder of his absence. Finally, his voicemail answered. "Leave a message." Her voice cracked as she whispered, "David, please, I need you. The baby, something's wrong. Please come home." She waited, clutching her stomach, but no reply came. Hours passed, the pain growing stronger. With trembling legs, Anna managed to drag herself into a cab and head to the hospital. Alone, in the sterile hospital room, the doctors moved quickly, monitoring her condition. "You're under too much stress," one of them said gently. It's affecting the pregnancy. You need rest, calm, and support. Support. The word stung. She had no one. As the monitors beeped steadily, Anna stared at the empty chair beside her bed. That chair should have held David's hand, should have been filled with words of comfort. Instead, it remained cold and lifeless, just like the space he had left in her heart. When the doctor asked if they should call her husband, Anna shook her head. Her lips quivered, but she forced the words out. He's unavailable. Tears slid silently down her cheeks. She thought of the promises David had once made, that he'd be there for her, that they'd raise their children together, that she'd never have to face the world alone. Now she realized those were only empty vows. The nurses tried to soothe her, but in the stillness of that night, Anna faced a truth she could no longer deny. David had abandoned her, body and soul. And it wasn't just betrayal. It was cruelty. To leave her at her most fragile moment, to choose another woman while his unborn child's life hung in the balance, was more than she could bear. Days later, Anna was discharged. She returned to their condo, but it didn't feel like home anymore. Clothes were missing from the closet. A faint trace of cologne lingered in the air, mixed with a perfume that wasn't hers. On the dresser, she noticed a receipt for an expensive necklace, clearly not meant for her. Her hands shook as she clutched the receipt. He didn't just leave, she whispered to herself. He replaced me. That night, Anna sat in the dark, staring out the window at the city lights. She placed both hands on her belly and spoke softly to her baby. It's just us now. We'll survive this. I don't know how, but I promise we will. Her words were brave, but her heart was breaking. She was a woman carrying life inside her, yet she had never felt more alone. And as the city buzzed outside her window, Anna didn't yet know that fate was about to send her a stranger who would change everything. The rain came without warning that evening. Anna, exhausted from another long day at school, walked home with her umbrella half broken against the wind. Her swollen belly made every step heavier, and her heart felt just as burdened. She hadn't heard from David in weeks. She had stopped leaving messages because the silence on the other end hurt more than any reply he could have given. As she crossed the street, a sudden dizziness hit her. Her vision blurred and her knees buckled. She clutched her stomach, panic flooding her chest. "Not now," she whispered. "Please, not now." The world tilted and she collapsed onto the wet pavement, raindrops pelting her face. People walked past, too busy, too distracted. Some glanced, then kept moving. Anna's tears mixed with the rain. She tried to lift herself, but her body refused. She thought of her baby, helpless, depending on her, and a wave of terror surged. Then, through the haze, a man's voice cut through. "Miss, are you all right?" A tall figure crouched beside her, his suit already soaked from the downpour. He shielded her with his jacket, concern etched across his face. His hands were steady but gentle as he checked her pulse. I'm fine," Anna tried to say, but her voice trembled. "You're not fine," he replied firmly. "You need a doctor." Without waiting for protest, he scooped her up effortlessly, carrying her toward a sleek black car parked at the curb. Inside, the warmth contrasted sharply with the storm outside. Anna tried to sit up, embarrassed, but the man held her steady. "Don't push yourself. I'll take you to the hospital." At the hospital, he stayed by her side as nurses rushed her in. Hours passed. When the doctor finally emerged, he explained that Anna had been dangerously dehydrated and under too much stress. "She and the baby are stable," the doctor reassured, "but she needs care, both physical and emotional." Relief washed over the stranger's face. He nodded, then walked into her room. Anna looked at him properly for the first time. His dark hair was damp from the rain, his tailored suit now wrinkled, but his presence carried authority and warmth. "Thank you," she whispered, her eyes brimming. "I don't even know your name." He extended his hand with a small smile. Michael Harrington." The name sounded familiar, but Anna was too tired to place it. She shook his hand weakly, feeling the strength in his grip. "You don't owe me thanks," Michael said softly. "No woman should face something like this alone." For the first time in weeks, Anna felt seen. Not as a burden, not as a mistake, but as a woman worth helping. She clutched his hand a moment longer than necessary, afraid to let go of the lifeline that had appeared out of nowhere. And though Anna didn't know it yet, this chance encounter with Michael would be the beginning of a bond that would shake the very foundation of the life David thought he controlled. The days after the hospital scare were some of the hardest for Anna. She returned to her empty condo, her body weak, her spirit even weaker. She tried to carry on with her routine, teaching, cooking simple meals, whispering lullabies to her unborn child, but loneliness sat like a heavy stone on her chest. She expected Michael to disappear from her life as suddenly as he had appeared. After all, why would a man like him concern himself with a stranger's problems? But he didn't disappear. The first gesture came quietly. A bouquet of white lilies arrived at her door with a simple note, wishing you strength and peace, M.H. She clutched the flowers, tears springing to her eyes. It had been so long since anyone had thought of her in such a kind, genuine way. The next day, a knock sounded at her door. When she opened it, Michael stood there, dressed casually this time, holding a bag of groceries. "I figured you shouldn't be carrying heavy bags around," he said, almost shyly. "Mind if I drop these in the kitchen?" Anna's first instinct was to refuse. She didn't want to seem weak, didn't want to owe anyone. But the sincerity in his eyes melted her resistance. She stepped aside. "Thank you, that's very thoughtful." From then on, small gestures became frequent. Michael would check in with a text, "Did you eat?" or "How's the baby today?" When she admitted she was struggling to prepare meals, he arranged for healthy dinners to be delivered to her door. When her washing machine broke, he quietly sent someone to repair it. Anna protested at first, insisting she could manage, but Michael only replied, "You don't have to manage everything alone." Each act of kindness chipped away at the wall of pain David had left behind. Anna began to look forward to Michael's visits. He never overstepped, never made her feel pressured. Instead, he listened, truly listened, when she spoke about her fears, her exhaustion, her heartbreak. One evening, as they sat in her small living room, Anna confessed through tears, "I don't understand why you're helping me. You don't even know me." Michael leaned forward, his expression calm but firm. "Because I can see you're stronger than you realize. And sometimes, even the strongest people need someone in their corner." Her heart tightened. Those words sank deeper than he could have known. For weeks, she had felt invisible, unwanted. Now, for the first time, she felt valued, but a quiet fear gnawed at her. She wondered if she was leaning too much on Michael, if she was letting herself feel comfort where she shouldn't. After all, she was still a married woman, even if abandoned. She placed a hand over her belly, whispering to herself later that night, "Don't get used to this, Anna. Don't hope for too much." What Anna didn't know was that her growing connection with Michael would soon be tested, and David's shadow was never far behind. At first, Anna thought she could hide. She told herself that if she kept her head down, focused on her baby and her work, people would eventually forget about David's betrayal. But in a small community, whispers travel faster than truth, and soon the whispers turned into daggers aimed straight at her heart. It began in the teacher's lounge. Two colleagues sat at the far end of the table, speaking in hushed tones but not hushed enough. "Did you hear? Her husband left her for some rich woman. Poor thing, and she's pregnant too. Can you imagine? Or maybe he just got tired. Sometimes men don't leave for no reason." Anna froze, her hands gripping her coffee cup so tightly she thought it might shatter. She wanted to defend herself, to shout that she had given David everything, but her throat closed. She sat silently, pretending not to hear, while their words cut deeper than any blade. At the grocery store, she noticed the stares. Women leaned close to each other, whispering as she walked past. Men glanced with pity, some with amusement. The cashier forced a smile but couldn't hide the flicker of judgment in her eyes. Even parents at school began to act differently. Where once they had praised her warmth and dedication, now they avoided eye contact. A few mothers even pulled their children closer, as if Anna's heartbreak were contagious. One afternoon, she overheard two mothers outside the school gate. She should have seen it coming. Men don't just leave happy wives. And now she's leaning on some stranger? I saw her getting into his car. Disgraceful. What kind of example is that for the kids? Anna's cheeks burned. Shame wrapped around her like chains. She wanted to scream, "You don't know me. You don't know what I've been through." But instead, she lowered her head and walked faster, tears stinging her eyes. When she got home that evening, Michael noticed her silence. "What happened?" he asked gently. She shook her head. "It doesn't matter." But it did matter. Every whisper, every stare chipped away at her fragile strength. She wanted to believe Michael's words, that she was stronger than she realized, but in those moments she felt weaker than ever. Late that night, Anna sat by the window, staring at the dark sky. She pressed her hands against her belly. "They think I'm a failure," she whispered. "They think I wasn't enough, but you?" Her voice broke. "You're my reason to keep going." Her baby kicked softly, as if answering her. She smiled through tears, finding a small spark of hope. Still, the cruelty of others lingered. Each day brought new stares, new whispers, new wounds. She was determined to endure, but she couldn't help wondering, how much more could her heart take before it shattered completely? And while Anna was breaking under the weight of judgment, somewhere across the city, Vanessa was preparing the cruelest betrayal yet. One that would drag David into ruin and pull Anna into a storm she could never have imagined. It happened on a Thursday afternoon, just as the school day ended. Anna was gathering papers from her desk, when a sudden wave of dizziness washed over her. She gripped the edge of the table, her vision dimming. The chatter of children faded into a distant hum. A sharp pain shot across her abdomen, and panic clawed at her chest. One of her colleagues rushed forward. "Anna, are you all right? You look pale." I need to sit," she gasped, lowering herself into a chair. But the pain intensified, and fear seized her. She thought of her baby, the tiny heartbeat she carried. Was she about to lose it all? Someone called for an ambulance, but before it arrived, Michael appeared at the door. He had been on his way to deliver some documents she had left in his car earlier. The moment he saw her, slumped and trembling, his face drained of color. "Anna!" he shouted, rushing to her side. Without hesitation, he lifted her into his arms. "Don't worry, I've got you." The world blurred around her as he carried her through the halls, ignoring the shocked stares of teachers and students. He placed her gently into his car and drove like a man possessed, weaving through traffic, his jaw tight, his knuckles white against the steering wheel. "Stay with me, Anna," he urged, glancing at her pale face. "Just breathe. You and the baby are going to be okay." At the hospital, doctors and nurses swarmed her. Michael refused to leave, pacing outside the room, demanding updates every few minutes. Hours felt like days as he waited, each second heavy with fear. Finally, a doctor emerged. "She's stable. The baby is fine, but the stress and exhaustion are putting her at risk. She needs constant care." Michael exhaled deeply, relief flooding him. He entered her room quietly. Anna lay on the bed, pale but awake, her hand resting protectively over her stomach. When she saw him, her eyes filled with tears. "You stayed," she whispered. "Of course I stayed," he said firmly, pulling a chair to her bedside. "I'm not leaving you, Anna. Not now, not ever, if you'll let me." Her lips trembled. She was so used to abandonment that loyalty felt foreign, almost dangerous. She wanted to believe him, but part of her heart still bore scars from David's betrayal. As the days passed, Michael proved his words with actions. He coordinated with the doctors, ensured she had the best care, and even rearranged his business schedule to remain close. Every morning he brought fresh flowers. Every evening he read aloud to her, sometimes the news, sometimes light-hearted stories, anything to keep her calm. For the first time in months, Anna felt safe. She was still fragile, still hurting, but Michael's presence wrapped around her like a shield. And yet, deep inside, a storm brewed. Because while Anna was beginning to trust Michael, David was about to face the cruelest betrayal of his life. And when his world collapsed, he would come crawling back to the very woman he had left behind, only to find her no longer waiting. The contractions began just after midnight. At first, Anna thought it was another false alarm, but the sharp waves of pain told her otherwise. She clutched her belly, breathing heavily, panic rising in her throat. Alone in her condo, she reached for her phone with trembling hands. Without thinking, she called the only person she knew would come, Michael. He answered on the first ring. "Anna?" Her voice cracked. "It's time. I think the baby's coming. I'm on my way. Hold on." Within minutes, Michael was at her door. He helped her down the stairs, his strong arms steadying her trembling body. "Breathe, Anna. Just breathe," he repeated, his voice calm but urgent. He guided her into the car and sped toward the hospital, his hand gripping hers the entire ride. By the time they arrived, Anna was drenched in sweat. her face pale, her breaths ragged. Nurses rushed her into a delivery room, and Michael followed, refusing to let go of her hand until they insisted he wait outside. The hours dragged on. Michael paced the hallway, his heart pounding with every muffled cry he heard from behind the door. He wasn't family, not by blood, yet he felt connected to Anna in a way he couldn't explain. He wanted to be there for her, to shoulder her pain, to protect both her and the child she was bringing into the world. Inside, Anna fought through the agony. She thought of her mother, of the nights she had spent alone crying, of the cruel stares and gossip, but most of all, she thought of the tiny life she was about to meet. "For you," she whispered through tears. "I'll be strong for you." Finally, after hours that felt like eternity, a baby's cry filled the room. The sound pierced through her exhaustion and filled her with overwhelming relief. The nurse laid a tiny, wriggling bundle against her chest. Anna sobbed, clutching her newborn tightly. "My baby, my sweet baby," she whispered. In that moment, all the pain, betrayal, and humiliation faded away. There was only love. When the doctor finally allowed Michael inside, he hesitated at the doorway. Anna looked up, her face tired but glowing, her arms cradling the child. "Michael," she whispered. He stepped closer, awe in his eyes. "He's perfect," he said softly, gazing at the baby boy. Anna smiled through her tears. "We made it." "He made it." Michael leaned down, brushing a strand of damp hair from her forehead. "You did it, Anna. You're the strongest woman I've ever met." Her heart swelled at his words. For so long, she had felt invisible, unworthy. But now, in this fragile moment, she felt cherished. As Michael stood by her bedside, watching over both mother and child, Anna allowed herself to feel something she hadn't dared in months: hope. But while Anna held her newborn and began to dream of a new life, far across town, David's world was about to implode in ways even he couldn't imagine. The weeks after giving birth were both the hardest and the most beautiful of Anna's life. Her baby boy Daniel was her light, his tiny fingers curling around hers, his soft cries in the middle of the night. Every moment reminded her that she wasn't truly alone. Yet, there were nights when exhaustion and fear pressed so heavily on her chest that she thought she might break. And then there was Michael. He didn't just check in, he showed up. He helped her with groceries, brought her warm meals, and even learned how to change diapers, though he laughed awkwardly the first few times. More than anything, he listened. When Anna spoke about her fears, about raising Daniel without a father, about the gossip still circling around town, about her shattered confidence, Michael never dismissed her. He listened with patience and answered with quiet strength. One evening, as Daniel slept peacefully in his crib, Michael sat across from Anna at her small kitchen table. "Anna," he said gently, "you've been through more than most people could handle. But you can't let David's betrayal define you. You are more than what he left behind." Her eyes welled with tears. "I don't feel like more. I feel broken, like I failed." Michael leaned forward. "You didn't fail. You survived. And now you have a chance to rebuild. Not just for Daniel, but for yourself. Let me help you." Those words planted a seed. Slowly, Anna began to see herself differently. With Michael's encouragement, she started taking small steps. She enrolled in a professional development course for teachers. She bought new clothes that made her feel confident, not invisible. She even started attending community events again, walking in with her head held high, Daniel in her arms. At first, the whispers followed her, but soon people began to notice her strength instead of her weakness. Parents at school praised her dedication. Colleagues admired her resilience. For the first time in months, Anna felt respected again. Michael was there through it all, never pushing, only guiding. He invited her to charity galas, where she met influential people who encouraged her growth. Standing beside him in elegant dresses he insisted on gifting her, Anna saw herself in a new light. She was no longer the abandoned wife. She was a woman rising from the ashes, stronger and more radiant than before. Yet deep inside, doubts lingered. Late at night, after Michael left and Daniel was asleep, Anna would stare at her reflection in the mirror. She saw a woman transformed, yes, but also a woman scarred. She wondered if she could truly trust again. Could she open her heart after all the pain? Still, each time Michael smiled at her, each time he gently rocked Daniel to sleep, she felt something dangerous. Hope. But just as Anna began to rebuild her world, David's empire was crumbling, and soon his downfall would drag him straight back into Anna's life. While Anna was slowly rising, David was spiraling into a storm he never saw coming. At first, everything with Vanessa felt like a dream. She was glamorous, exciting, and she made him feel powerful. With her by his side, he walked into upscale restaurants and exclusive parties where people who once ignored him now treated him like a king. But behind Vanessa's intoxicating smile was calculation. She wasn't with David for love, she was with him for leverage. And David, blinded by lust and ego, didn't notice the subtle ways she began to control him. "Darling," she purred one evening, draped across the leather sofa in her penthouse, "if we're going to build our future together, you have to invest in me. I have a new business idea. A luxury events company. With your drive and my connections, we'll be unstoppable." David hesitated. He had been pouring more and more money into her whims, jewelry, trips, designer clothes. But Vanessa leaned closer, her red lips brushing his ear. "Unless you don't believe in us," she whispered. That was all it took. Desperate to prove himself, David transferred a large sum into her account. Weeks later, she asked for more. "Just until the contracts are finalized," she promised. Soon, David was draining savings accounts, maxing out credit cards, even taking risky loans. Each time he hesitated, Vanessa would remind him of the life they were building together, painting pictures of endless wealth and success. He believed her, because he wanted to. But the cracks began to show. His colleagues noticed his distracted behavior at work. His boss questioned missing funds from a project. Rumors swirled. Still, David clung to Vanessa, convinced that once her company launched, everything would turn around. Then one night, he came home to her penthouse and found the place stripped bare. The closets were empty, the jewelry, the clothes, the designer bags, all gone. So was Vanessa. Frantic, he called her phone, disconnected. He checked her social media, deleted. It was as if she had never existed. And then the emails started. Loan officers demanding payment, creditors threatening legal action. His boss discovered financial discrepancies and suspended him. In less than a week, David's shiny new life crumbled into dust. He sat in the dark of his empty condo, his head in his hands. For the first time, he thought of Anna. Not with love, but with desperation. She was stable, reliable. She had always forgiven him before. Maybe, just maybe, she would forgive him again. But even as he plotted his return, shame gnawed at him. The man who had abandoned his pregnant wife for another woman was now broke, humiliated, and alone. And when David finally built up the courage to crawl back, he had no idea that Anna's world had changed so much, that she was no longer the woman who would welcome him home. Rain poured heavily the night David finally returned to Anna's doorstep. His once polished suit was wrinkled, his tie missing, his hair unkempt. He looked nothing like the confident man who had strutted through the city with Vanessa on his arm. Instead, he looked desperate, broken, a shadow of himself. Anna had just put Daniel to sleep when the doorbell rang. She opened the door and froze. David stood there, drenched, eyes bloodshot, a hollow smile on his lips. "Anna," he whispered, "please, I need to come in." For a moment, Anna felt the old reflex, the part of her that once would have rushed to comfort him, but then her gaze shifted to the crib behind her, where Daniel slept peacefully. A surge of strength rose in her chest. She stepped outside, closing the door behind her so David couldn't see the baby. "What do you want?" she asked coldly. David's eyes filled with tears. "I made a mistake. Vanessa, she tricked me. She took everything. I've lost my job, my money, my reputation. I need you, Anna. I need my family back." Anna's hands trembled, but her voice was steady. "You left us. When I needed you most, when our baby needed you, you walked away. You didn't just leave, David. You abandoned me in a hospital bed, carrying your child." He fell to his knees on the wet ground, clutching at her hands. "I was stupid, blind. But I see now, Anna. Please forgive me. I'll change, I swear. I'll be the husband you deserve." Her eyes burned, but she refused to let tears fall. "The husband I deserve? David, the husband I deserved never would have left me in the first place. The father my child deserves never would have chosen a mistress over his own family." David shook his head violently, desperate. "We can fix this. I'll get another job. I'll make things right. Just don't turn me away." Anna pulled her hands free. For the first time in their marriage, she looked at him not with love, not with pity, but with resolve. I spent months crying, begging, hoping you would come back. And now that you're here, I realize something, David. I don't need you anymore. His face crumpled. You don't mean that. I do, she said firmly. I have Daniel, and I have people who actually care about me. You lost that chance when you chose Vanessa. David reached out, grabbing her wrist, his voice breaking. Anna, please, don't do this to me. I have nowhere else to go. She yanked her arm back, her eyes like steel. That's not my problem anymore. Go, David. You made your choice. Now live with it. She turned, walking inside, and closed the door. David remained on his knees in the pouring rain, sobbing, his fists pounding against the wooden door that would no longer open for him. What he didn't know was that Anna's rejection was only the beginning. Soon she would step into a new world so bright and powerful that his humiliation would be witnessed by everyone. For months, Anna had kept her world small, her classroom, her condo, and the quiet safety of Michael's company. But Michael believed she was meant for more. You've spent too long hiding in the shadows, he told her one evening as they shared coffee at his office. It's time people see who you truly are. Anna shook her head. I'm not ready. They still whisper about me. Michael leaned forward, his voice steady. Let them whisper. Walk into the room with me, and they'll stop whispering. They'll start watching. A week later, she found herself standing in front of a mirror, barely recognizing the reflection. The elegant black gown Michael had chosen hugged her figure modestly yet gracefully. Her hair, styled into soft waves, framed her face. A touch of makeup highlighted her natural beauty, not masking it, but enhancing it. For the first time since David's betrayal, Anna felt powerful. When Michael arrived to pick her up, his eyes lingered in awe. Anna, he said softly, you're stunning. The gala was held at the city's grandest hotel, a place Anna had only ever seen in magazines. Crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead, and the air buzzed with the hum of powerful conversations. Business tycoons, celebrities, politicians, everyone who mattered seemed to be there. As Michael guided her into the ballroom, all eyes turned. Murmurs rippled across the crowd. Some recognized her as the abandoned wife. Others saw only the radiant woman standing confidently beside one of the city's most influential men. Anna's pulse raced, but Michael's hand at the small of her back steadied her. He introduced her to people she'd once thought were far beyond her reach. This is Anna Miller, he said proudly. An extraordinary woman and a dear friend. Every introduction, every handshake, every smile rebuilt pieces of her shattered dignity. She wasn't the woman people pitied anymore. She was someone to admire. Then came the moment that silenced the room. As Anna and Michael mingled near the stage, a group of reporters began snapping photos. Flashes exploded around them. Someone whispered too loudly, "Is she the reason Harrington's been smiling lately?" Anna flushed, but Michael only smiled. He leaned down and whispered, "Ignore them. Tonight, you take back your story." And take it back she did. When asked about her work, she spoke passionately about education, about giving children opportunities. Her words drew genuine admiration, and for the first time, people applauded her, not because she was Michael's guest, but because she was Anna. As the night drew on, Anna felt a lightness she hadn't felt in years. She laughed, she spoke, she owned the room. She had stepped out of the shadow of betrayal and into the light of her own strength. But the night wasn't over. At the edge of the ballroom, another figure entered. His suit was borrowed, his face pale, his eyes wild. David. And when his gaze locked on Anna, radiant, admired, standing proudly beside Michael, his humiliation began to boil into a storm that would soon erupt in front of everyone. The moment David stepped into the ballroom, the air shifted. His presence wasn't grand or commanding, it was pitiful. His once tailored suits were gone, replaced by a wrinkled jacket borrowed from a friend. His shoes were scuffed, his hair unkempt. He looked nothing like the man who had once strutted proudly through the city on Vanessa's arm. But his eyes burned with a desperate fury as they locked on Anna. She was radiant, her gown gleaming under the chandelier lights, laughter spilling easily from her lips as she stood beside Michael. She wasn't broken, she wasn't forgotten. She was glowing, and that sight sliced David open. He pushed through the crowd, ignoring the startled stares and whispered remarks. "Anna!" His voice cracked, echoing too loudly in the elegant room. Conversations faltered, champagne glasses froze midair. All eyes turned toward the disheveled man storming toward the woman who had once been his wife. Anna stiffened, her heart racing. Michael instinctively stepped closer, his hand brushing her arm, protective yet calm. "Do you want me to handle this?" he asked softly. "No," Anna whispered, "not yet." David reached her, his chest heaving. "Anna," he pleaded, his voice raw. "Please, you don't belong here. You belong with me, with us." His eyes flicked desperately toward Michael. Then back to Anna. "He doesn't love you. He's just showing you off." A ripple of murmurs spread through the ballroom. Guests leaned closer, eager for the drama unfolding before them. Cameras flashed as reporters sensed a scandal worth capturing. Anna's voice was calm, steady, but edged with steel. "You have no right to speak to me like this, David. You made your choice. You left me." David shook his head violently. "I was wrong. Vanessa lied. She ruined me. But you're my wife, the mother of my child. Please, take me back." He dropped to his knees right there on the marble floor, clutching at her gown, his tears soaking the fabric. Gasps filled the room. The image was shocking. The man who once abandoned his pregnant wife now begging at her feet in front of the city's elite. Anna's throat tightened, but she held firm. "When I needed you most, you weren't there. And now when you need me, you expect me to save you?" "No, David, that's over." The crowd erupted in whispers. Some shook their heads at David's shamelessness. Others admired Anna's strength. Michael stood tall beside her, his gaze steady, his presence a silent shield. David's face twisted, humiliation burning through him. He stood abruptly, pointing a trembling finger at Michael. "This isn't love. He's using you, Anna. You'll see. You'll all see." Security moved closer, ready to intervene, but Anna lifted her chin. Her voice, clear and unwavering, cut through the noise. "No, David. The only person who used me was you." The words struck like a hammer. The crowd murmured louder, the cameras clicked faster, and David's face drained of color. And as the guards moved to escort him out, David realized his downfall wasn't just financial. It was public, and it was far from over. The ballroom buzzed after David's outburst. Guests whispered behind their champagne glasses, the press scribbled furiously, and cameras captured every second of his humiliation. Security hovered nearby, but Anna raised her hand to stop them. Something inside her told her the truth had not fully surfaced, and when it did, David's downfall would be complete. Just then, a reporter stepped forward, microphone in hand. "Mr. Miller," she called sharply, her voice cutting through the murmurs. "Is it true your mistress defrauded you? That Vanessa Carter took all your money and disappeared?" The question hit David like a slap. His mouth opened, then closed. His face flushed crimson. The crowd gasped, leaning closer to catch his response. I don't know what you're talking about," he stammered, trying to stand taller. But his trembling hands betrayed him. Another voice called out from the crowd. A businessman Anna vaguely recognized stepped forward, his tone cold. "Vanessa Carter borrowed $500,000 under your name, Miller. And when she vanished, guess who came knocking? My lawyers. Care to explain?" The room erupted with murmurs. David's eyes darted wildly, panic spreading across his features. "That wasn't me. It was her. She said it was temporary, that she'd pay it back once the contract's cleared." But no one looked convinced. A woman in a glittering blue gown laughed bitterly. "Contracts? Vanessa never had any contracts. She's been playing men across the city for years. You were just the latest fool." David's knees buckled. His shame was no longer private. It was broadcast under chandeliers before the city's wealthiest and most powerful. Anna stood still, her face calm, her heart steady. She had dreamed of this moment once, dreamed of seeing David suffer as she had suffered. Yet now, watching him unravel, she felt something unexpected. Not pity, but closure. Michael stepped forward, his deep voice commanding the room. "Ladies and gentlemen, let us remember, this is not Anna's disgrace. She's not defined by David Miller's failures. She is here tonight because she chose to rise, to rebuild, to inspire." Applause broke out, first hesitant, then strong. People turned toward Anna, admiration replacing judgment. For the first time, the narrative shifted. She was no longer the abandoned wife. She was the woman who had survived and stood tall. David, meanwhile, staggered backward, his eyes darting from face to face, searching for sympathy, finding none. The truth was laid bare. He was broke, betrayed, and despised. Still, he made one last attempt, He turned back to Anna, his voice cracking. Please, Anna, I've lost everything. Don't let me lose you too. For Daniel's sake, for us. Anna's eyes burned, but her voice was clear. You already lost me, David, long ago. The words echoed like a gavel striking, final and merciless. And as David stood shattered before the crowd, Michael reached for Anna's hand, setting the stage for a moment that would change her life forever. The ballroom was still buzzing from Anna's sharp rejection of David when Michael stepped forward. His tall frame commanded attention, his presence steady and composed. Holding Anna's hand gently, he turned to face the crowd. The murmur of voices faded into silence. Every eye was fixed on them. I think it's time we set the record straight, Michael said, his voice strong yet calm. For too long, Anna has been whispered about, pitied, and judged. But I want everyone in this room to know the truth. Anna Miller is not a victim. She is a survivor. She is a woman of strength, courage, and grace, and she deserves respect. A wave of applause rose, filling the grand hall. Anna's cheeks flushed, her heart pounding. She had never asked for attention, but now, standing beside Michael, she felt her dignity restored. Michael's grip on her hand tightened, reassuring her as he continued. When I first met Anna, she was alone, carrying not only her child but also the weight of betrayal and shame. And yet, she never gave up. She kept teaching, she kept nurturing, she kept loving. That is the kind of woman she is. The applause grew louder. Anna blinked back tears. For months, she had endured whispers about her weakness, her supposed failures. Now, in front of the city's elite, she was being honored for her strength. Michael's voice deepened, filled with emotion. I want you all to remember this moment, because while some men, his eyes flicked briefly toward David, who stood pale and trembling at the edge of the crowd, chose selfishness and deceit, Anna chose resilience and love. She is the example we should all admire. The crowd erupted, some rising to their feet, clapping, nodding in agreement. David flinched, as if every word was a lash. His humiliation was complete. Where once he had walked proudly with Vanessa, he now stood alone, exposed, stripped of dignity. Anna glanced at him briefly, not with longing or regret, but with finality. He was no longer her story. Her story was standing beside her, speaking truth and lifting her higher. Reporters pushed forward, shouting questions, their cameras flashing. Mr. Harrington, are you two together? Are you declaring your relationship tonight? Michael didn't hesitate. He turned to Anna, his eyes softening, his voice lowering so only she could hear. I won't say anything unless you want me to. Her breath caught. For a moment she hesitated. The world was watching, the weight of the past still heavy on her shoulders. But then she thought of Daniel, of the nights she had spent alone, of the way Michael had never failed her. Slowly she nodded. Michael turned back to the crowd, his voice ringing clear. Yes, Anna is the woman I care for deeply, and I will stand by her, always. The ballroom exploded with applause, cheers, and flashing lights. Anna's heart swelled, tears spilling down her cheeks, not from pain this time, but from pride. And yet, as the cheers echoed, no one knew that the most dramatic moment was still to come. At a place far grander than this ballroom, under the roar of engines and the shadow of a private jet. The night after the gala, the city was still buzzing with headlines about Anna and Michael. Photographs of her in the black gown filled social media feeds, her name on everyone's lips. From abandoned wife to radiant queen, one article read. For the first time in months, Anna felt the sting of gossip replaced with pride. Michael had planned a trip for them. Nothing extravagant, just a weekend escape to clear her mind. But because he was Michael Harrington, the trip involved a private jet waiting at the city's exclusive airfield. As dawn broke, Anna arrived at the airport with Daniel in her arms, Michael at her side. The sleek jet gleamed under the rising sun, its engines humming softly, ready to carry them into a new chapter. For Anna, the sight was surreal. Months ago, she had been abandoned in a hospital bed. Now, she was boarding a plane with a man who treated her with honor. Michael noticed the awe in her eyes. This isn't about wealth, he said gently. It's about freedom. You deserve to see the world without chains holding you back. Anna smiled faintly, holding Daniel closer. I never imagined life could feel this hopeful again. But hope was fragile, and it was about to be tested. As they approached the jet, a commotion broke out at the far end of the terminal. Shouts echoed, footsteps pounding. Anna turned, her heart lurching. David. He was disheveled, his clothes rumpled, his eyes bloodshot. He shoved past security, ignoring their orders to stop. "Anna!" he cried, his voice cracking. "Don't leave me, please!" Michael instinctively stepped in front of her, shielding her. The guards rushed forward, but David broke free, dropping to his knees right there on the tarmac. "Anna, I beg you," he wailed. "Don't go with him. He doesn't love you. He'll throw you away like everyone else. But me, I'm your husband. I'm the father of your child. Please, give me one more chance." The scene drew stares from airport staff and passengers nearby. Phones lifted into the air, recording every second. David's humiliation was no longer private. It was live for the world to see. Anna froze. For a moment, the past flashed before her, the promises, the laughter, the betrayal. She remembered lying in that hospital bed alone, remembered the whispers, remembered Vanessa's smirk in those glossy photos. She stepped forward, her voice calm but sharp as glass. "David, you chose to leave me. You left me when I needed you most. And now you expect me to forget all of that because you have nothing left?" David clutched at her gown, sobbing. "Yes, because I'm nothing without you. Please, Anna, please don't walk away." Michael's hand gently touched her shoulder. His eyes were steady, his voice low. "You don't owe him anything, but whatever you choose to say now, Anna, the world is listening." Anna looked down at David, broken, trembling, on his knees. She lifted her chin, her decision burning in her chest. And in the roar of the jet engines, with cameras capturing every breath, Anna prepared to deliver the words that would seal David's fate forever. The engines of the jet roared, filling the air with a deep vibration that seemed to echo Anna's heartbeat. David was still kneeling on the tarmac, his hands clutching at her gown, his voice raw from pleading. "Anna, please, don't walk away from us. I can change. I'll be better. I'll be the man you need me to be." The cameras were rolling, passengers and staff watching from every angle. The woman who once hid from whispers now stood in the center of a public storm. But this time, she was not trembling. She was not broken. She was ready. She gently pulled her gown from David's grip and looked down at him, her voice steady. "You had your chance, David. More than one, and every single time, you chose yourself. You chose her. And when I begged for your love, when I carried your child alone, you weren't there. That was the moment you lost me." The crowd fell silent. Even the security guards paused, waiting. David's tears streaked his face. "But I'm your husband. We can start over. For Daniel, don't you think he deserves his real family?" Anna's chest tightened at the mention of her son, but she stood firm. "Daniel deserves a father who shows up, a father who doesn't abandon him before he's even born. You gave up that right when you walked away." She turned slightly, her eyes finding Michael. He stood a few steps behind her, not pushing, not demanding, simply waiting, his presence a steady anchor. His gaze told her everything. The choice was hers alone. Anna lifted her chin and spoke, her voice carrying above the roar of the jet. "I am not your wife anymore, David, and I am not your savior. My future is not behind me. It's right here, beside the man who stood by me when you abandoned me." Gasps swept through the crowd. Phones caught every word, every tear glistening on David's cheeks, every ounce of power in Anna's stance. Michael stepped forward then, slipping his hand into hers. He didn't speak, but the gesture was louder than words. The two of them standing side by side were a picture of unity and strength. David's face twisted in anguish. He stumbled to his feet, shouting desperately, "You'll regret this. Anna, he doesn't love you like I do. He'll use you, just like Vanessa used me." Anna shook her head slowly, her voice cutting through his madness. "No, David, the only person who ever used me was you." The crowd erupted. Some clapped, some gasped, some shook their heads in disbelief. But one thing was clear. David's humiliation was complete. Anna squeezed Michael's hand and turned toward the jet stairs. Each step she took was a step away from her past, a step toward the life she deserved. Behind her, David screamed her name, his voice breaking into the morning air. But she didn't turn back. Not once. And as the door of the jet closed behind her, Michael prepared for a gesture that would not only end David's hold on her forever, but seal Anna's future in a way she never dared to dream. The cabin of the private jet was quiet, a stark contrast to the chaos they had just left behind on the tarmac. Anna sat in one of the plush leather seats, Daniel asleep in her arms, the low hum of the engines vibrating softly beneath her. Her chest was still heaving from the confrontation, but her spirit felt lighter than it had in years. Michael sat across from her, his eyes fixed on her, with a mix of admiration and something deeper. Something Anna had tried to ignore for months. He leaned forward, his voice calm yet weighted with emotion. "Anna, do you realize what you just did out there?" he asked gently. She looked down at Daniel, brushing a finger over his tiny hand. "I told the truth. I chose not to let him control me anymore." Michael's lips curved into a proud smile. "No, you didn't just tell the truth. You claimed your life back. You stood in front of the world and showed them who you are. And Anna," his voice softened, "I have never been more proud of anyone in my life." Her cheeks flushed, her heart skipping. She had grown used to Michael's steady kindness, but tonight his words carried something more, something that made her pulse race. He stood then, reaching into the inner pocket of his jacket. Anna's eyes widened as he pulled out a small velvet box. Her breath caught. "Michael, what are you doing?" He sank down on one knee, right there on the cabin floor, the box open in his hand. Inside, a dazzling ring caught the glow of the cabin lights, sparkling like a promise too bright to ignore. "Anna Miller," Michael said, his voice strong but tender, "I know your heart has been broken. I know you've carried burdens no one should ever have to carry alone. But from the day I found you in the rain, I knew you were someone extraordinary. You taught me what true strength looks like. And now, I want to spend the rest of my life proving that love can heal, not destroy." Tears welled in Anna's eyes, blurring her vision. She pressed her free hand to her mouth, overwhelmed. "I don't expect you to forget the past," Michael continued. "But I promise you a future where you and Daniel are never alone, never abandoned, never unloved. So Anna, will you marry me?" The jet was silent, except for the hum of the engines and Daniel's soft breathing. Anna's mind swirled, images of her lonely nights, her tears, her whispers to her unborn child. And then, images of Michael, holding her hand in the hospital, rocking Daniel to sleep, lifting her back into the light when she thought she was lost forever. Her tears spilled over. She lowered her hand, her voice trembling. "Yes, Michael. Yes, I'll marry you." Michael slipped the ring onto her finger, then leaned up to kiss her gently. Daniel stirred but did not wake, as if even he knew this moment was sacred. And while joy filled the cabin, outside on the tarmac, David stood in the pouring rain, watching the jet ascend, realizing he had lost everything, forever. The jet soared into the clouds, carrying Anna, Daniel, and Michael toward a future that felt brighter than anything she had ever imagined. For Anna, the sound of the engines was like a hymn of freedom, drowning out the years of betrayal and pain. She glanced at the ring on her finger, its sparkle reminding her that even broken hearts could be mended with love and patience. Meanwhile, back on the tarmac, David stood drenched in rain, staring at the empty sky where the jet had disappeared. His knees buckled, and he sank onto the cold pavement. No cameras flashed anymore, no crowd lingered. Only silence and shame remained. In the weeks that followed, his downfall was swift. Word spread about Vanessa's betrayal, about the loans and debts left in his name. Former colleagues avoided him, friends refused his calls, and creditors closed in. He sold his condo, then his car, until he was left with nothing but a suitcase of clothes and a trail of regrets. At night, he wandered the city streets, haunted by the vision of Anna standing tall in the ballroom, radiant and untouchable. He remembered her eyes when she rejected him, not filled with anger, but with finality. She had moved on, and there was no room for him in her new life. Anna, on the other hand, blossomed. With Michael by her side, she stepped confidently into a world she never thought she belonged in. She continued teaching, but she also began leading education initiatives funded by Michael's foundation. She became a voice for women who had suffered in silence, telling her story not with shame, but with pride. At galas and events, she was introduced not as the abandoned wife, but as Anna Harrington, the woman who turned pain into purpose. Every time she stood at a podium, Michael's supportive gaze from the crowd reminded her that she was never alone again. Daniel grew surrounded by love, not only from Anna, but also from Michael, who cherished him as if he were his own. Together, they created a home filled with laughter, safety, and dreams for the future. And yet, Anna never forgot her journey. She remembered the nights of tears, the cruel whispers, the hospital bed where she had whispered promises to her unborn child. But now, when she looked back, she didn't see weakness, she saw resilience. She had survived what was meant to break her. One evening, standing on the balcony of their new home, Anna whispered into the cool night air, "We made it, Daniel. We made it." Michael stepped behind her, wrapping an arm around her shoulders, and together they looked at the stars, their hearts at peace. Far away in a cheap rented room, David sat alone, staring at an empty glass. No one called, no one cared. He had traded love for lust, loyalty for lies, and now he lived with the consequence, a life of solitude. Anna had found her justice, not through revenge, but through rising higher. And David, left in the shadows, became the warning that betrayal always carries a price. All right, my friend, so the story has closed its last chapter. If you're still here with me right now, it means something in Anna's journey touched your heart in a personal way. And maybe, just maybe, it's because her story isn't just hers, it's ours too. Life will betray us sometimes. People we trust may leave. Just like Anna, we might be abandoned at our most fragile moment. But the message here is clear. Betrayal doesn't define you, your resilience does. As Marcus Aurelius once wrote, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Anna's strength came when she decided not to live in the shadow of her pain, but to step into the light of her dignity. Epictetus, another Stoic, reminded us, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. David's betrayal could have destroyed Anna forever, but instead she transformed it into a story of survival, healing, and hope. She didn't get revenge by hurting him back. Her true revenge was living well, building a life filled with respect, love, and peace. And that's the lesson for us. Whatever storm you're going through right now, remember Anna's journey. You are not broken beyond repair. You are not defined by those who walked away. You are defined by the strength you choose when you decide to rise. So if this story stirred something in you, if it reminded you that healing is possible, that dignity is worth protecting, that love can be rebuilt, then let's keep this message alive. Hit that like button, share this story with someone who needs it. And don't forget to subscribe so you'll never miss another journey like Anna's. Because who knows? The next story might be the one that helps you rise too.